Welcome, guys, to the first episode of On the Field podcast, powered by Thales. In this podcast, we're going to be covering all week's games from last week to the big matchups happening this week. So I'm Alex. I've been watching college football since I was 9. Big fan, definitely a big parlay guy. And I'll let Steven introduce himself too.
I'm Steven. I am the co-host here for the On the Field podcast. Big college football fan and even bigger basketball fan, but we'll save that for a couple weeks. Super excited to be joining Alex here to break down last week's matchups as well as a couple of the bigger matchups coming up this week. And super excited to share what we know and what we think.
Yeah, for everybody that's not familiar with overtime, it's a Web3 sports market where you can go check out the games, you can bet, you can put money on there. It's powered by Chainlink. So you're always gonna get, accurate results. If somebody wins, you're gonna make sure you get your payout. So to kick this off, I think there's a couple interesting games. LSU versus Missouri. Steven, did you watch that game?
I did. I was hoping on another week of a Brian Kelly downfall, and I backed Missouri in that one. Sad to see the late fourth quarter mess up by Missouri there.
Yeah, I actually went with LSU again. So last week they busted my parlay, 7-leg parlay. LSU versus Ole Miss was the last leg. I put 1K to win 4Gs, and LSU blew it. But this week I went with them again. You can never count out Jaden Daniels.
Absolutely, and it's funny you mentioned that because last week LSU busted your parlay. This past weekend for me, they busted mine. Or I guess Missouri did in that sense. The only leg of my parlay not to hit. I backed Ohio State in the spread and the Texas-Oklahoma over were my other two legs. We can dig into those deeper later, but unfortunate that LSU seems to be hit or miss week to week. We'll see how they fare this upcoming week in their matchup against Auburn. They're taking on Auburn. Anything else notable for you, Alex, in that matchup?
Yeah, I think Jaden Daniels in that fourth quarter, he got hurt. They had a touchdown called back against him. So for him to come back, that guy's a dog. He's definitely Heisman candidate. Went 15 for 21, 259 yards, 3 tutties, and 130 yards on the ground. That man's a beast. I think he's single-handedly carrying the LSU right now. That guy's a problem. So I think they played Florida State, Ole Miss, Missouri. I mean, they've just been, their defense is terrible. But if you look at the teams that they're playing, they're just playing stacked offenses. I mean, Brady Cook, he went 30 for 47. Luther Burden had 11 receptions, 149 yards. I mean, the teams that they're playing and the offenses that they're playing is just brutal. They have a brutal schedule. So, but I like LSU. I wish they had a better defense. I think if they had a better defense, they would be, maybe still undefeated, maybe had one loss still against Florida State. I like Florida State as well. But Jaden Daniels definitely, I put him in the top 5 for Heisman.
Yeah, one of the bigger names to watch in college football and in the SEC specifically. Good point about LSU. Last week people were questioning their top 25 ranking as a 2-loss team, and I guess they proved their chops with a big win. They're still in the top 25, but there is something to say about teams that are battle tested early. You got teams like Michigan who are very in their own right blowing people out week to week. They're undefeated, but still haven't yet faced a big opponent to really see where they lie in the college football playoff discussion. Obviously, they'll be there till the end of the season. Big matchup with Ohio State will be the tell-all there in a couple of weeks. But LSU, battle-tested. They got a tough schedule. A couple other teams with a couple of tough weeks of matchups like Notre Dame. They're going on their fourth straight week against a ranked opponent. So it's interesting to see how these teams that are playing tough opponents week in and week out fare in the latter half of this college football season.
Yeah, Notre Dame's schedule is just brutal. I mean, they played Ohio State, Duke, Louisville, and now they're going on. Now they're going to go and play USC. I mean, that's just a brutal schedule.
Absolutely. And people like to give Notre Dame a lot of hate for not being in a conference, not seemingly complaining about Notre Dame not having big opponents. And, you know, year to year, we see them continually coming up against ranked opponents in various conferences. And while they haven't had much success in the college football playoff the two times that they got there recently, it speaks to the fact that they're able to hold their own against a majority of college teams. This season hasn't been the best for them so far, unfortunately blowing into Ohio State late a couple weeks back, having 10 men on the field in that last drive, winning late against Duke, and then blowing the second half against Louisville with just some questionable calls on offense, not utilizing Audric Estime. It'll be intriguing to see how they bounce back this week against a USC team, a bitter rivalry in the South Bend this weekend. So a lot to look forward to in that matchup late on Saturday night.
Yeah, I actually like Notre Dame in this game against USC. Their offense has been struggling, but thankfully for them, they're gonna go play against a USC team that might have a worse defense than LSU.
Absolutely. I may be a tad biased here, but I'll do my best to give a statistical backing to my takes here. I like Notre Dame at home this weekend as well. The spread right now is Notre Dame -2.5, and the over/under is set at 60.5. Here's where I fall on the Irish and the Trojans this weekend. USC has traveled, or USC and Notre Dame have played each other every year except for 2020, but they've had this rivalry for the longest time, and it's seemingly very close in the all-time record, but there's a big disparity in the home versus away matchup. USC is 13-28-2, I believe, on the road, taking on Notre Dame. And one of my biggest reasons as to why that is the drastic different parts of the country these two teams are from. Southern California, and then you got the tundra, I like to call it, that is South Bend, Indiana. The forecast this weekend, Saturday night, 50 degrees and raining. I think that this is going to go under the 60.5 total. I think Notre Dame and USC, even though there's questions about these two teams' defenses, I think it's going to be a tough, hard-fought matchup. I think Notre Dame's going to bounce back and utilize Audric Estime a bit more on the ground, try to expose USC's line and just chip away at them slowly and build on an early lead and just keep their foot on the gas. I think it's going to be close, but I think Notre Dame will pull away, definitely by more than a field goal. I'm comfortable in taking the Irish bouncing back after a humiliating loss, and as well on the under 60.5. We had a lot of games go over last week. We had a few go under as well. I like this game to go under. Alex, any take on the under or the over?
Yeah, I like the under as well. If you see USC's defense, they gave up 28 points against San Jose State, 28 points against Arizona State, 41 to Shedeur Sanders in Colorado, 41 this past weekend against Arizona. Now Arizona, we won't hold that against them because they did. Arizona played Washington really good as well. They lost by one score, 7 points, one touchdown. I think Sam Hartman is going to have a good game here against USC. I think he's going to expose that USC secondary. And I think, well, I'm not going to pick them. I'm not going to pick the under on my parlay. I'll pick Notre Dame money line on my parlay. I'll add them to my parlay. I think they squeeze out a good win.
Yeah, one more point to make here. Last week's matchup with USC and Arizona, That the line for that game was around 70, I want to say, and that game heading into the at the end of regulation, there was a triple overtime game. Heading into regulation, they were well under, I believe. So one thing to note with that last week, giving up 41 points to Arizona, I think this game uh, will be decided a little bit earlier, and then it'll be a question of defense in the second half.
Yeah, I like Notre Dame's defense. Maybe their defense didn't play that good this past weekend, but I mean after that schedule, it's kind of hard to not let up a little bit on that defense. But I think they come back this week in South Bend. They have a good defensive performance. I think the under could hit, but I'd rather take Notre Dame straight up on the money line.
Absolutely. Moving
They're,
on,
they're,
is there another big matchup you want to get into next?
yeah, Alabama versus Texas A&M. So the line on that was pretty close. I think Alabama was favored 59. I took Alabama straight up on the money line. Jalen Milroe, he just went off. He had a good game like I thought he was. No, he didn't exactly have a great game against Texas. Texas was able to get a lot of pressure on them and force him to make a lot of bad throws. But in this game, he looked comfortable. He had a lot of good deep balls. He was able to connect with his wide receivers, with his tight end. Uh, Alabama looked really good, and especially that second half.
Yeah, that one was a close one throughout. Alabama covering the -3 and the under hitting as well. The total was at 50. I think Alabama, for the longest time, they've seemingly been at the top of college football, and it's safe to fall into a lull of thinking that they're always going to be this insurmountable mountain of a task week in and week out for some teams. But they've proven to be fallible this season. They've proven that they've had some weak spots. I think they maybe got a bad game out early, losing early in the season. It looks like they have begun to right the ship, and things are looking much better for Alabama going forward. They're always going to be in the conversation in the SEC, without a doubt. And yeah, I like them going forward as well.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Alabama versus LSU. I think LSU secondary is pretty bad. Jalen Milroe likes to throw that deep ball. That's going to be a good game. I think
Absolutely.
The Alabama defense is going to make the difference in that game. I think they'll take it.
Well, Alex, let me get your take on a bit of a discrepant, a bit of a not a top matchup, but let me get your take on Alabama, ranked 11 this week, hosting Arkansas. Line is -20. The over under is at 47. What's your take for Alabama this week?
Yeah, I'll add Alabama to my parlay. Straight up money line. Give me the money line. We're not going to do the spread. We'll just take them up. I don't think they're going to lose to Arkansas. Unless something crazy happens like last week, Georgia Tech, Miami. Did you see that game?
The late the late mishap where they didn't kneel. You're referring to, correct?
Yeah, correct. Mario Cristobal. I think he's on the hot seat. They had that game won. All he had to do was take a knee. They go, they run it, they fumble the ball. A couple plays later, Georgia Tech's in the end zone, and they lose the game. That's brutal because it was gonna. This week, Miami's gonna play North Carolina. If they just would have taken that knee, this game would have been so much bigger, and we would have been talking about it a lot more. Definitely ruined a little of the hype for that game.
Just a tad, I would agree. Nonetheless, we have that Miami North Carolina matchup is still intriguing. I would say coming up, one of my favorite storylines so far throughout this college football season has been the spectacular play of these bigger schools known for their basketball programs, teams like Kansas, Kentucky lost last week in a tough one against Georgia. They got killed. But teams like Kansas, teams like North Carolina, teams like UCLA having great starts to the college football season, which is a good segue into Miami and North Carolina. UNC favored by 3.5 points. Over under is 57.5. I think UNC just keeps on rolling here. I think they will easily cover the 3.5 points. I won't make a call on the over under. However, my gut leans on the over with how well their offense has been cooking so far this season. Alex, what's your takes?
Yeah, I like North Carolina too. Drake May, he's looking real good. Last week, 33 for 47, 442 yards, 3 tutties. I mean, he's balling out right now. I think I'm leaning towards the over as well, but I'll take North Carolina on the money line.
Absolutely. Yeah, always nice to just stash in a couple of favorites in the money line parlay. Alabama, the individual lines here right now have them at about minus 1,300 against Arkansas. But when you put that in with a couple teams that you just know for sure will not lose some of these games, can get you a nice, solid return and a good position overall. So, yeah, UNC money line would be a good add to the parlay, I'd say as well.
Yeah, and before we move on to this week's games, let's cover the big one from this past week: Texas versus Oklahoma. So I had Texas going. I had Texas going into this game. They let me down. Mm-hmm. I even wore the Texas hat. They let me down. What's your take on that game?
Alex, I was there with you. We spoke about this last week. This was the big one coming in. The final Red River rivalry as members of the Big 12. This one was going to be a great game no matter what. I was backing Texas as well. I was hooking them. And unfortunately, it was a close one that ended up going Oklahoma's way at the end of the day. Matthew McConaughey, what can I say? They had him on as a guest picker for College Game Day, and had to ride with Matthew McConaughey. He's driving the Lincoln. Got to ride with the boy there. Unfortunately, didn't pan out that way. However, I did take the over in that game. That was, I believe, around like 61.5, maybe 62 it closed at. And just squeaked by 34-30. I thought that game was always going over. I took that in my parlay, not the spread. And hit because of Missouri, as we spoke about earlier. But yeah, I always liked the over in that game. Those are two teams that you know are going to be fighting for a win in a big rivalry matchup. Two great offenses. It was going back and forth. It slowed down a tad in the second half, but nonetheless, a fantastic matchup throughout. Oklahoma proving that they're no slouches. Texas still in the hunt with only one loss. I like both of these teams going forward. I think they'll be in the conversation until December.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. This could be the first of two. Brent Venables did a good job on his play calling. The kickoff return that got called back, that was a beautiful play call. Definitely had a lot of trick plays in there as well from Texas on their side. That was just a great game. It looked for a second that Texas was going to take it late in the fourth quarter. They had stopped Oklahoma on 4th and 1, I think, and they had just stopped them for a couple of drives, and Oklahoma couldn't get anything going. But in that last 30 seconds, that last minute, just two, 3 plays, and they're down, 60 yards, and then they go ahead and score. That was just a brutal ending, but that was definitely a great game.
Without a doubt. Looking like both teams are on a bye this week coming up, if I'm not mistaken. Or if they aren't.
Yeah, I think they are.
They are, yeah. I just switched over to check the Big 12. They weren't on the ranked page. Yeah, so both teams are earning themselves a week off there. Nothing to follow with Oklahoma or Texas coming up. But Definitely two teams to watch the rest of the season here.
Yeah,
One
for
big
sure.
match, another big matchup I want to get to um, from last week. Maybe not two massive teams in the rankings. One powerhouse, however, in Ohio State, who have looked pretty shaky, narrowly squeaking by against Notre Dame a couple weeks back. We spoke about that late fourth quarter drive at the goal line. Notre Dame having 10 men for two plays, but Ohio State still racking up the W's. Last week they hosted Maryland at the Horseshoe, and it started off pretty poorly for Ohio State. Tagovailoa was making some insane passes. We saw a left-handed grab in the end zone to start off the day. 7-0. They kept up the pressure. I believe it entered into the half tied, and the spread for that game it wasn't close. It was -17. Um, Ohio State ended up finishing the day covering, but they have looked shaky. You can't deny this season.
Yeah, I don't love Ohio State. They're too high. They're too highly ranked for me. I don't see how you can have Ohio State ranked above Florida State. They didn't look so good. Even in that Notre Dame game, they didn't look so good either. It was on the last drive that they pulled it out. I don't love this Ohio State team. I think we'll see. We'll see when they play Penn State and Michigan. I think they lose both games.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough back half of the season for the Buckeyes. Uh, Kyle McCord has been serviceable this season so far, stepping into the big role at quarterback, but they haven't been blowing out teams like their rivals in Michigan have been so far. They did get a big win against Notre Dame, a big ranked opponent, but you expect to be having an easier time with some of these lesser ranked opponents. You don't want to be sweating in the third quarter against Maryland when you're supposed to be winning by by 3 touchdowns. However, that game I did back the Buckeyes -17. Their history against Maryland recently and all time uh, has shown that they have been prone to be blowing out the Terrapins. And I just kept going with that trend. They eventually did get the cover on the -17. Let's see Ohio State this week. They're playing Purdue on the road. The line is even bigger for the Buckeyes to cover, currently at 19.5, and the over/under set at 49. Alex, I'll let you get the first take here.
Yeah, I'm just gonna stay away from this game. I don't trust Ohio State enough to put them on my parlay. I was actually thinking about putting them on my parlay last week. Oh, when I was watching that game and they were tied, I was like, oh, I'm glad I didn't put that on there.
Absolutely, yeah. I was shaky on Ohio State to start in the first half, and I was confident in Missouri. And both games flipped by the end of regulation. For me, I'd like to make a call. I do think Ohio State. Hmm, they will win, but they will not cover. Purdue has been known to play a bit of a spoiler in years past, getting unexpected wins against bigger opponents. I believe a couple years back they also beat Ohio State as a big underdog. Give me Purdue plus 19.5. I just think it's just too many points. Ohio State has not looked very solid. I'm happy taking the Boilermakers with 19.5 points there. I'll stay away from the over under of 49.
Are you gonna add that to your parlay?
I won't add that to the parlay, but I will put an individual small position on that of about a unit or so.
Yeah, I think that's a good play. I think Purdue. I think they have enough to at least keep it close. We'll see. We'll see how they play.
Be an interesting one for sure in the Big Ten. Uh, I want to move on to the rivals of the Buckeyes in the Michigan Wolverines.
Sure, let's get it.
So last week, Michigan played Minnesota. The line was Michigan to cover 19 and a half. And they absolutely blew that out of the water. They took down Minnesota 52-10. They covered the over of 47 and a half just on their own right. This week, Michigan is playing Indiana, and the line has nearly doubled to minus 33 and a half with an over-under of 46.
I
I guess
think they might be able to cover that.
who do you think? Michigan?
Yeah, Michigan. I mean, Michigan's just looking really good. I liked Michigan last year. I liked them this year. I think they'll win this game. I won't put it on the spread, but uh, yeah, I think they'll win.
You're gonna toss Michigan money line into that parlay?
Yeah, I'm not seeing Michigan on here on the games on overtime. Do you see it?
Um, I don't as well at the moment. Yeah,
I
maybe
think
we can
yeah
move
we
on
can
for yeah.
we yeah we can we'll see if it gets added before Saturday, and I'll put them on the parlay for sure.
Absolutely. That might be one of those games where there's no line for the money line just because it's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
odds would be ad ridiculous. ESPN analytics projects that Michigan has nearly a 97% chance of winning.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that's not gonna be that's not gonna be on there.
any takes on this Michigan team? I guess going forward toward the end of the season, JJ McCarthy has been spectacular to start this season. I'd say he's looked very comfortable uh, in in the offense. Jim Harbaugh, obviously one of the best college football coaches around. I just have too much faith that they will be in the Big Ten title game, and so far, I don't see anybody who has a chance of taking that crown from them this year.
Oh, I'm gonna give a hot take right here.
Okay.
I like Michigan. I like JJ McCarthy. You know, Harbaugh's been he's had a couple of rough years, good years, but he hasn't been able to win the big one. I like Penn State's defense. Now that Penn State versus Michigan, that's going to be a good game. I, I'm definitely going to be tuned into that one, but I think it'll be a close one. But I'm going to side with Penn State here to beat Michigan.
Ooh. Yeah, Penn State currently ranked 6, Michigan at number 2. They'll be facing each other in early November, a couple weeks before the season ends. That, I like to hate on Michigan just as someone who has grown up with an affinity for the Buckeyes, but I can't deny how great they've been this year. Penn State has looked fantastic as well. They're coming off of just back-to-back massive routes. Last week they beat Northwestern 41-13. The week prior, shutting out 24th Iowa at the time, 31-0. This week they're taking on an even worse opponent in UMass, who are currently 1-6 on the season. Alex, you want to take a little deep dive on the Penn State Massachusetts matchup coming up right now?
Yeah, I think Drew Aller, he's looked pretty good. He's had 1,092 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions so far. It's pretty impressive. I think he's finally settling in. I think they're gonna win it easily. Let's see what the spread is at.
So currently, the spread for Penn State is to cover minus 41.5 against UMass. And I think I'm going to stay away from the spread. However, I do really like the total here, 54 and a half. I think this one's going to be a blowout, and Penn State will take their foot off the gas because they got a much bigger matchup next week taking on Ohio State. I think they're going to just put up a couple easy touchdowns early and look to rest a couple of their key guys heading into a bigger week next week. As well as UMass, they don't have much of an offense to begin with. Coming up against this Penn State defense, they might easily get shut out.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I think it'll be a shutout. And for Penn State to score, how much is it? 54? 54,
the
what's the line?
total, yeah, total for the game 54 and a half. And Penn State, the line is 41 and a half. So
Yeah, they would basically have to score all that by themselves. I don't think they're going to get any help from UMass. Yeah,
absolutely. I think the under here is a lock. This will be my lock of the week. Penn State, Massachusetts going under the total of 54 and a half. An even bigger lock for the parlay, Alex, if it's on, is the Penn State money line. I don't know if they'll cover 41 and a half. It's likely they probably will, but for me, the under is an easy call.
yeah. You guys heard it. Steven's going with the lock of the week. Penn State, UMass for the under. I like that play as well.
Absolutely. Okay.
Let's. Do you have any more games that you want to cover for this past week, or do you want to move on to the games that are on Saturday?
Yeah, we've been bouncing back and forth a bit between last week's big matchups and the matchups heading into next week. Um, what haven't we covered yet? Georgia, Kentucky. I mentioned a bit earlier, bringing up Kentucky. Is there anything you want to mention about the Georgia Bulldogs, the country's number one team right now, Alex?
Yeah, I don't think they're. Me personally, I don't think they're not the number one team in the country. You gotta respect what Kirby Smart is doing, Brock Bowers, but I don't think they're gonna win the championship this year. I think Michigan looks good, Florida State looks good, Oklahoma looks good now. There's a lot of teams. It's gonna be interesting come January.
Definitely not a runaway in any aspect of the imagination. It's going to be, I think, one of the most wide open years for the college football playoffs, maybe in the history of the college football playoffs, where maybe you got teams like Georgia that will get a spot. But so much could shake up in the latter half of the season, especially for these SEC teams that are going to be battling toward the end of the year. I like Georgia's chances to make the college football playoff. Um, it'll be a much different question to see who they will be facing and what that matchup looks like. However, you can't deny that they have a spectacular defense. They seem to, like sorry. You can't deny that they have a spectacular defense, and on the other side of the ball, they're able to put up tons of points. They totaled 51 last week. 2 weeks prior, they hit 49, and then 5 weeks prior, 45. And even in those two other weeks, totaled 27 and 24. Georgia, great on both sides of the ball. And the one thing I will note, they have a fan base that travels like no other. They travel in packs. They, even when they're on the road, more than half the stadium seems to be a sea of red. And their fans are loud. They'll let you hear it. I think wherever they go, they have, on the road, they'll have a home-like atmosphere. And I just can't see them losing until one of the bowl game, or sorry, one of the title games, or in the college football playoffs. I think they have one of the best well-rounded teams. You mentioned Kirby Smart earlier, one of the best coaches in college football. It'll be interesting to see how they go from here. But coming up, they have Vanderbilt this week. Line for this one is currently 31.5, over under being 56. And I gotta say, it seems like way too many points, but I think this is one where you just kind of have to trust that Georgia's going to be Georgia, and they're going to play their brand of football, not give up much to Vanderbilt. And by the end of the day, you're going to see 40 to 49 points being put up and less than 2 touchdowns for Vanderbilt. My gut says that Georgia covers, but my gut is even more confident on the under of 56.
Let me see. Oh, here we go. Okay, so I like Georgia to win straight up. I don't know if they'll cover. So looking at it, they gave up 21 points to UAB. They had that close game against South Carolina. South Carolina is not looking good at all right now. It was tied at the half, 14-14. 2 weeks ago, they had a really close game at Jordan Hare. But to be fair, I'll give them that one. That one, I'll give them that the past 4 teams that had gone to play at Auburn, ranked number 1, had all lost, or the previous 3 teams, ranked number 1, playing at Jordan Hare, had all lost. So I won't hold that Auburn game against them. But that UAB game and that South Carolina game is definitely pretty worrying. I wouldn't take them to cover that spread.
Yeah, definitely have had their hiccups early on the season. I feel like coming off of a big week against Kentucky, a massive routing, my gut says Georgia's found their groove here, but definitely a good point from Alex. 31.5 is no small task, and you could safely say that's too many points. So be advised, maybe you want to stay away from the spread.
Yeah, I like the over, though. I think they can hit the over.
Okay, so Alex and I are on opposite ends of the total. I'm taking the under. He's taking the over at 56 points. We'll see next week whose gut was correct there.
Yeah, for sure.
I believe the last big matchup that we maybe haven't talked about is Florida State and Vatech. I know you've mentioned Florida State a couple of times already on the pod, but is there anything you want to add from last week's matchup between the Seminoles and the Hokies?
Yeah, I like Florida State. It looked like that game was 39-17.
Yep.
Let's see.
30,
Jordan Travis, 18-24, 170 yards. I like this Florida State team. They have a good defense. I mean, they were able to just completely neutralize Jaden Daniels in week 1. I mean, to stop that LSU offense, that's tough. I think I like Florida State to win the whole thing. Give me Florida State to win the whole thing.
Oh boy. Well, let's try to get a live check on the odds for Florida State here to come away with the college football championship. But I will say Florida State has been one of the most impressive teams to me throughout the start of this college football season. They have not had things come easy, but they have proven themselves week after week and time after time again. They've looked pretty flawless here, and they didn't cover last week's total, they didn't cover the spread last week of -26, but heading into this week, matched up against, just had it here. I know the spread is 17.5, and I'm very confident in the cover that they'll cover that.
I think they cover. I think they cover as well. And another thing that's important to note, Florida State won the last BCS national championship, and it looks like they might win the last college football playoff. That would be sick if they win.
as designed with the 4-team format, right?
Yep.
Yeah. No, without a doubt. And now I'm back. I'm back on track. I got my notes here. They're playing Syracuse this week, who are 4-2. The line is Florida State to cover 17.5, and I think this is easy. They're at home. Weather looks great in Florida. Syracuse has looked pretty rough the past 2 weeks. They lost to Clemson at home, and then they got absolutely killed by UNC. Kind of looked sloppy on defense a couple of plays. They had some easy chances at an interception here or there, and couldn't mark any receivers. They got a big play from UNC on one of those drives. I don't think they're going to be able to defend Florida State in the slightest. I think 17.5 is one of the better spreads to bet on this weekend as Florida State hosts the Orange.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'll take them to cover the spread as well.
Nice. A line as well for that one, 56 points. I have a feeling this could go over pretty easily. Florida State putting up 39 last week, 31, but 66 points in week 2 against USM, and then 45 points the first week against LSU. Absolutely a rout there. I think this one could easily go over 56.
Yeah, especially if Syracuse, even if they show a slight improvement from the past 2 weeks, I think we have no problem hitting the over on this one.
Absolutely. I think we hit all of the bigger matchups from last week. I touched on them and touched on going into those respective teams heading into this week. Alex, is there any game maybe that wasn't as big on the radar that surprised you this past weekend?
Yeah, so we talked about this one before last week. UCLA versus Washington State, right? A one-loss UCLA team against, I think, Washington State was ranked number 13.
Yep.
And I was surprised when I saw the line that Washington State was the underdog. But I knew that Vegas had something up their sleeves. I knew that it could be a trick. And I told you as well. And it turns out it was. They lost that game, I think, 25-17. Cam Ward couldn't do it. They couldn't get their offense going. They struggled. UCLA had a good defense, and Dante Moore showed out. He played good at home, and they got the win. So surprising, but I also kind of expected that when I saw the line. And yeah.
Yeah, that game, like you mentioned, we saw that as a tad bit of an outlier there. You got a ranked opponent as the underdog. UCLA at home. The line for this game was set at 59 points. Came in well under, with UCLA winning 25-17. Four interceptions total throughout that one. So maybe a bit of sloppy play leading to the under cashing pretty easily. UCLA has proven themselves now, and this week they're coming up against, I would say, an even tougher opponent. Although they're not ranked as highly as Washington State was, UCLA will be at Oregon State, 5-1 Oregon State, UCLA 4-1. The line for that game, Oregon State -3.5, and the total is set at 54. Alex, you think UCLA can prove that they have it cut out for them once again and prove the doubters and the haters wrong?
That's going to be tough. If they were playing at home, I would give them the benefit of the doubt. But Oregon State on the road, they have a more balanced offense. Washington State's more of a pass team. They don't really have a running game. I think this is going to be tough for them to pull it out. I like Oregon State here.
Yeah, I do have to agree with you here. I think last week being at home was a big plus for the Bruins. They're heading into a lot more hostile territory here on the road against Oregon State. A great fan base, a loud arena. If we look at Oregon State's past couple matchups, they put up 52 to 40, 21 to 7. They lost against Washington State narrowly 38 to 35, which might be a little bit of an indication that maybe UCLA could prove themselves again, but previously beating San Diego State 26 to 9 and then a massive 55 to 7 win for them in week 2. I think Oregon State is going to put up a ton of points, and I'm not sure if UCLA will be able to match that. They're coming off of 25 points last week and only put up 7 points a couple weeks prior against Utah on the road. I think they will have a tougher time scoring in this matchup. I think 3.5 for Oregon State is very, very doable. Give me that. Give me Oregon State to cover that line of 3.5, and over or under 54. This is a tough one. It's almost a toss up for me. If UCLA is looking decent, the over hits easily.
Yeah, I think the over has a chance of hitting on this one. Dante Moore, he's just a freshman, but next year he's going to be a problem.
Yeah,
5-star recruit. He doesn't look as good right now, but I think next year he's gonna have a good season.
Yeah, if he's able to polish up a couple of those mistakes from last week's, limits the turnovers. If UCLA can, get a touchdown early and keep themselves in the game, I think the over is an easy hit. I will just stick with Oregon State covering -3.5. But I think this is one of the sneakier, more exciting matchups coming up this weekend. Number 18 UCLA and number 15 Oregon State.
Yeah, I'll take Oregon State money line. So Utah and UCLA have similar defenses. I think Utah has a better defense actually, and they were able to score 21 on them. I think Oregon State can win. I'll take them on the money line.
All right, sounds nice. What more do we, or rather, let's segue into fully looking at this upcoming week. We covered a lot of the big games so far. Any sneaky matchups coming up for you that you have your eye on that maybe not everybody will?
Let's see. Missouri versus Kentucky, that's going to be a good game. Oh, I like Brady Cook. I like Luther Burden. That's a dangerous duo. I mean, Brady Cook had 340 yards against LSU. He's playing real good. I think Luther Burden is definitely a problem, I think. Missouri's the underdog in that game. Let's see. Yeah, Missouri's the underdog in that game. I like Missouri to cover. -3. I think they can cover. They might straight up win. I think Missouri has a good chance.
Missouri to cover +3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that is a safe bet. Kentucky didn't look like themselves last week, and you can blame that on, having a very tough opponent in Georgia. Mizzou looked like a fantastic team through about 2.5, 3 quarters last week against LSU. I have faith that they'll be able to bounce back and prove that they are not maybe a front-runner contender, but definitely in the conversation. Kentucky had a fantastic start to the season. I think it was, shocking to see them at 5-0, and you wondered when it would stop. A lot of people predicted that the game against Georgia would be much closer than what it ended up being. I think Missouri easily, as an underdog, will cover +3. But definitely a fun matchup in the SEC this weekend at Saturday night. A similar game for me that's not as big of a matchup, one of the other big basketball schools in Kansas. They'll be on the road at Oklahoma State. The 5-1 Jayhawks taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Yeah, on the road in Oklahoma. The line for this one, Kansas -3. Call me crazy, but I think we got a rock chalk Jay Hawk here. Keep it going and give me Kansas -3. We got great weather. Kansas putting up 51 on UCF last week after getting a beating by Texas. But rightfully so. Texas has proven themselves this season without a doubt. Previously putting up 38 on BYU, 31 on Nevada, 34 against Illinois. I think they will easily score a lot of points here. The line's at 56.5. I like Kansas to cover. I like the over to hit. Alex, what's your take on this intriguing matchup?
I'm seeing that Kansas quarterback is doubtful for this game, but I think they'll still win. I don't know if they'll cover, especially if he doesn't play. It's gonna be tough to cover if he doesn't play. It looks like he still has a back issue. He missed practice on Monday and Tuesday. This might be his third straight game that he misses. That's gonna be interesting.
Definitely massive to see how that goes for Jalen Daniels, the junior quarterback for Kansas. They do seem to have a good run game as well as passing game. It'd be interesting to see how this line moves if or when he is ruled out, but we'll have to monitor that situation going forward. I say if he's playing, it's a slam dunk -3.
Yeah. If he's playing, yeah, that's almost a lock.
But we'll steer clear of making any calls on that for now. Man, Alex, we've been chatting for 50 minutes so far. A little past 50 minutes. We might have to start wrapping up in a bit. Is there anything left from week 7 that you want to highlight before we start wrapping things up here?
I think week 7 is this week. We missed one big matchup. This is the one. All right, let's see. We have Texas A&M, Tennessee, Auburn versus LSU. Okay, let's cover this one real quick. LSU playing at Death Valley against Auburn. Give me LSU, and I'm going to put that one on my parlay money line. Give me Jaden Daniels and LSU.
Okay, another add to the money line parlay. My bias against Brian Kelly might be my biggest bias in all of sports. And I don't think it's fair, especially after being wrong last week. I don't think it's fair for me to make a call here. But I'd say that adding LSU money line to the money line parlay would be a very safe bet. I don't think that LSU covering the 11 points here is as much of a given. However, I do like the over-under of 61. I like the over. Both of these teams have proven themselves to be they're capable of putting up a lot of points. Auburn the last 2 weeks, only 30 points total throughout, but they face tough opposition in Texas A&M and Georgia. They put up 59 against UMass, which we had, as earlier discovered, UMass doesn't have much of a defense, but 45 points as well against Samford. I think that if they're able to get even a slight bit of opportunities throughout, they'll be able to put up some points. And LSU, I think they're going to have another big day. They put up 49 last week, 49 the week prior, 34, 41, and then 72 a couple weeks back. This one might be very easy for the over. I'll take the over in this game. I'll stay away from calling anything specific on LSU and Brian Kelly's squad there.
Yeah, I'll take LSU. I don't know. I'm not as confident in the over for this game, just because of Auburn. Auburn's defense. They held Georgia to 27. They held California to 7 points. California just put up 32 on. Let's see, who did they play?
California just played.
Oh, they put up 32 on Washington. That game finished
Yep.
59-32. They put up 40 on Oregon State. So Auburn has a good defense, but they're playing at Death Valley. I'll just take LSU straight up on the money line.
Gotcha. Well, you mentioned Washington. We have to talk about Oregon, Washington, the highest ranked matchup of the week, really quickly. Number 8, Oregon, will be heading to Husky Stadium to take on the Oregon Ducks.
Yeah, I like this game. This is I need to watch this game. First thoughts, I'm gonna go. Well, first let's look at some stats. All right, we have 2 Heisman front runners. Michael Penix Jr., 1,999 yards, 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. I have Bo Nix, 1,459 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So last year, Washington won by 37, or they won by 3, 37-34. I think the difference this year is the Oregon defense. They held Shedeur Sanders in Colorado to 7 points. USC gave 41 up to that same offense. I like Oregon Ducks here. Give me Oregon plus the points.
Okay. Yeah, this is the big one of the week. 2 insanely good offenses. First and foremost, I love the over of 67. I think that one. I'll hesitate on calling another lock here, but if I get a baby lock of the week, it's the over of Oregon and Washington, 67. Just as you said, 2 Heisman candidates, 2 well-oiled machines on offense. I can see this one heading into an overtime game like USC and Arizona last week. As for the money line or the spread, I honestly think it's a toss-up. This might be one of those games like Texas and Oklahoma last week that comes down to who has the ball in their hands last. So I'll refrain from calling a winner here. My gut says to stick with the home team and take Washington at home in a close one, but I love the over again. It's 67.
Yeah, that's a good one, but I'll take Oregon for revenge. They want revenge. And it's year 2 now with their new coach. Yeah, I think Bo Nix is pretty experienced. Played in the SEC, played against the best teams. I think playing Washington at home, I think they can still pull it off.
Okay, so Alex and I on opposite ends of another position here. Alex back in the Ducks. I'm back in the Huskies. We'll see next week who was right. Also, let us know in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or tweet at us if you're following along on X or Twitter. Let us know what you guys love this week. Give us your locks. Give us the teams you like the most. Who do you like going forward to make the college football playoff? Who's your winner pick for the entire season? Who do you like for Heisman? We'd love to hear what you guys have to say, and even more so, would love to maybe have some potential fans on in the future for a small segment here on the podcast. We're really looking to engage in this community as much as we can, so please let us know your thoughts or reach out. The best way to go forward is building a community with all of you guys. We wouldn't be doing this if you guys weren't listening, so please let us know what you think. We got another great week of college football coming up. Last week, I was on the couch a little bit too long because of how many great matchups we had. And I'm looking forward to doing it all over again this weekend. Alex, any final thoughts before we head over and build our parlays and put in some positions?
Yeah. Last week I was there on the couch as well. Watched 3 games back to back to back. Next week is definitely going to be an exciting week. I like the Washington-Oregon game is going to be a great game no matter how it ends up. For my parlay, I'm going to go here. I'm going to take Colorado money line, Alabama money line, Florida State money line, Oregon Ducks plus the 3 points, and I'll take LSU. That's going to be my parlay.
All right. Let's see. For me, I like my individual positions. I might play it a bit safer this week. Maybe I'll put a parlay in of. Got to put in the parlay, one of the legs, my lock of Penn State and UMass under. Give me Notre Dame minus 2.5. I know the atmosphere well. I know that the Southern California kids don't like to play in the cold. If Notre Dame doesn't win this game, I probably can't watch them for the rest of the season. So I don't want to live in a world where that happens. Let me add Notre Dame minus 2.5. And I'll round it out with the Tar Heels minus 3.5 against Miami, and Oregon State minus 3.5 against UCLA. I'll toss in 4 legs. Penn State,
Nice.
UMass, Notre Dame to win by a field goal, UNC to keep it rolling minus 3.5, Oregon State to put the brakes on the Bruins minus 4. That'll be my cheeky parlay.
No, you might just have convinced me to put Notre Dame on there on the parlay, but that's tough. I do like Notre Dame. USC's defense is terrible. You know, I might put it on the parlay.
Here's what I'll say. I love Notre Dame. I am ready to get hurt again in the case that they get embarrassed by number 10 USC, but I just don't think Marcus Freeman can afford another L. I think he will be whipping the guys into shape this week, making sure they know what they're doing, making sure they have 11 men on the field, minus 2.5. That is my call for them. And let's see how things unfold the rest of the season for the Irish.
I think that's a good play.
Okay, so I think we're nearing the end here on our inaugural episode of the On the Field podcast. We took you through last week's matchups, the highs and the lows, segued into individual matchups coming up this week after that. Alex and I took our positions. We even put together a couple of parlays, 4 legs for myself, many more legs on Alex's end. I can't keep track, but it's going to be an exciting week of college football. Nonetheless, I'm excited to see the amount of highlights we have to watch on Sunday before the NFL starts up. And Alex, I'll let you take it from here to close us out.
Yeah, thank you for everybody tuning in, everybody listening. As Steven said, if you guys want to come on the show, we want to hear your takes. We want to hear who you think's gonna win. We can get it started like college game day. Get some pickers in here, get some opposing views as well. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. And this is just the first episode. We're just getting started, and maybe at the end of the season, me and Steven will go to the college football playoffs. We can watch some games live there. I think that would be pretty fun. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for tuning in. This was the first episode of On the Field podcast where we covered the NCAA football with Alex and Steven. So thanks to our two hosts. Just a quick reminder that none of this was financial advice or sports advice. The choice is yours. Place your position on overtime markets.xyz. See you next week.